And an Illinois appeals court upholds Jussie Smollett's disorderly conduct conviction. Smollett was convicted in 2021 for staging a racist, homophobic attack on himself in 2019 and filing a false police report.
Mr. Smollett will be headed back to the Cook County Jail. Keep in mind, he has only served 6 of his 150-day sentence.
So Jussie Smollett is going back to jail after losing an appeal of his conviction for committing a hate crime against himself. This is why he was appealing his conviction.
Good morning. Well, Jussie Smollett's legal challenges continue as an Illinois appeals court. Here's oral arguments today that the former Empire TV star's conviction for staging a racist, homophobic attack on himself back in 2019 and then lying to police about it should be thrown out. Now, in the lengthy written appeal, Smollett's attorneys claim that his conviction violated his Fifth Amendment rights against double jeopardy. You may know that double jeopardy is a legal protection which keeps people from being punished for the same crime twice. The special prosecutor disagreed.
Okay, so now before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the law, let's just get a quick recap of the story. This is what Jussie Smollett said happened to him that night.
So people, now it's like, well, Nate, you must have been fooled when it first came out too, because it was a believable story. Now, I'm going to tell people straight up, I wasn't fooled, not anyway, about this story. Now, when I first heard it, right? When I first heard it, I'm going to keep it real. I was sitting here with my wife and we was chilling and we heard the story and she was like, it's so horrible. He got beat up by some MAGA people in the middle of Chicago. So I'm like, when did this happen? She was like, at 2 o'clock in the morning, spider sense start tingling. 2 o'clock in the fucking morning in Chicago? And I'm like, hold on. There's a fucking polar vortex. Yeah, this is a motherfucker. It's like 10 degrees outside. I'm like at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Brant Miller, here's the overnight update of the forecast on NBCChicago.com. You could still see a couple of flurries tomorrow. Look at that air temperature. 1 below 0 for the high temperature. Tomorrow night into Wednesday morning, 23 below. Not wind chill, air temperature. Wednesday's high temperature, 15 below 0. 25 below the air temperature Wednesday night into Thursday. Dangerous cold. Check on your neighbors.
What the fuck is he doing out there 2 o'clock in the morning? So she's like, okay, so she's like, oh, no, he was going to get a Subway sandwich. So I said, they waiting for him at 2 o'clock in the morning to get a goddamn Subway sandwich? How the fuck did they know he's coming out the apartment? Oh, no, he was coming from the airport, went to his apartment, came out for the Subway sandwich, got the sandwich, and then came back home. And I'm like, yo, somebody was waiting for him all that time in Chicago with MAGA hats? And then we heard the story. They got bleaching ropes. I'm like, hold the fuck on.
Next black guy comes in Subway.
Two motherfucking white guys in the middle of Chicago with MAGA hats got bleach and rope at 2 in the morning waiting for Jussie Smollett coming from Subway? I'm like, what? Is this really the story that he's pushing? I'm like, babe, something doesn't seem wrong with this story. It doesn't just doesn't make you think, And nobody from your team is telling you, we got to hold up on this one because ain't them 2 white guys in MAGA hats got bleach and rope waiting for Jussie Smollett at 2:56. That shit just don't make no sense.
Now, after an exhaustive police investigation, the police found that Jussie had hired 2 men to stage a hate crime against himself, and he actually paid them with a check. Now, Jussie was eventually charged with filing a false police report, and he was arrested by the Chicago Police Department. The elected prosecutor, Kim Foxx, who was close personal friends with the Smollett family, messaged the Smolletts, advising Jussie to be quiet and stay consistent.
Show that Smollett's sister and Fox were in communication, and Fox says, your brother should be fine as long as he stays consistent. How does she stay in the job after this?
Now, after that revelation that the elected prosecutor was helping the defendant try to stay out of trouble, on February 19th, 2019, State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself.
Then the controversial Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself. Her office issued this statement. Out of an abundance of caution, the decision to recuse herself was made to address potential questions of impartiality based upon familiarity with potential witnesses in this case. And there was confirmation that Smollett pleaded no contest back in 2007 in Los Angeles to a DUI, providing false information to police, and driving without a license.
So now, since Kim Foxx, the elected DA, recused herself from the case, she couldn't have anything to do with it. Under state law, her entire office wasn't able to prosecute Smollett because every one of the deputy and assistant prosecutors obtained their authority to prosecute defendants from Foxx. So Foxx's legal team advised her that essentially the office is done and we can't do anything with the Smollett case. Check it out.
The supervisor of the Criminal Appeals Division looked at the legal angle and wrote to office brass, "My conclusion from all of these authorities is that while the state's attorney has the complete discretion to recuse herself from any matter, she cannot simply direct someone, even the first assistant, to act in her stead."
A real recusal under Illinois law means that the case would be in somebody else's hands, outside of that office, outside of her, and that's not what happened.
So what did Kim Foxx do? Well, she simply ignored the law. Foxx actually went as far as to create a fake position and appoint one of her first deputies to that position to prosecute Smollett. Kim Foxx's office on March 26, 2019 dropped all the charges against Smollett, and then she claimed that, hey, 57 other cases like Smollett's have also been dropped in the past. $10,000 fine that she ordered Smollett to pay for restitution was all that she can get back. It was the maximum. That Smollett had no criminal background. But we know that's false because of the California DWI case, and that the evidence wasn't strong enough to obtain a conviction. So these were the reasons why Kim Foxx said, hey, we're just going to drop all the charges and just get the $10,000 back. Now, after an investigation by the court, they found that each one of the reasons that Kim Foxx gave us, the reasons why that she didn't prosecute Jussie Smollett, was actually all lies. Here are the receipts.
The report found misleading and false statements by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, like there were 5,700 similar cases, but the special prosecutor found few examples of similar cases, that $10,000 would be the maximum he could be asked to pay, but Smollett could be forced to pay restitution to the city. That Smollett had no criminal background was not true. He had a DUI in which he lied and got 24 months probation. And that there were evidentiary problems with the case. But the special prosecutor found in interviews, like an interview Kim Foxx did with ABC 7, where she said they had a solid case against Smollett.
I cannot ask Mr. Smollett to forfeit his $10,000 bond if I didn't believe we could meet our ethical burden in this case.
Now, after dismissal, Jussie then made a public statement saying exactly what Kim Foxx had advised him to say earlier. Stay consistent.
To know that not for a moment was it in vain. I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of.
So the fix was in, and Jussie was going to walk free. Now, the deal between the defense team and the state's attorney's office was that they drop all the charges, Smollett would perform something like 2 days of community service, and that he would forfeit his $10,000 bond. Now, this also allowed Smollett to be able to claim his innocence, since he didn't have to plead to anything, and the case was essentially dismissed. Now, here is Jussie Smollett's lawyer claiming that there was absolutely no deal, and Jussie just gave the money to the prosecutor's office in the city because he's a good person. Check it out.
Handling the case. Now, the prosecutor's office says that the charges were dropped in exchange for your client's agreement to forfeit $10,000 that he had paid in a bond and to do community service. Is that correct? Were those conditions on his dismissal of charges?
There were no conditions, and there was no plea. There was no agreement in place. They did want him to forfeit the bond, and that's something that we discussed with him, and he initially struggled with because he didn't want the perception to be that he had done anything wrong. But at the end of the day, forfeiting $10,000 versus putting your life on hold for a year was a small cost to pay.
So Jussie walked free, and there was no deal, and it was all good in the world. But now the court system stepped in. See, Foxx didn't have any legal authority to make any deal, remember? She just made up a position and let Smollett walk free without any legal authority. But the court stepped in and said, hold on a second. This is not the way it should go.
Police investigation and grand jury indictments against Smollett for manufacturing a hate crime. State's Attorney Fox recused herself from the case and then dropped the charges. Today, veteran County Judge Michael Tooman unleashing this rabid order against Fox, suggesting her communication with Smollett's family and friends might also be indicative of bias. Tooman concluding Fox ignored standard recusal procedures by turning over the case to a top assistant. His appointment was to an entity that did not exist.
This really takes this prosecutor to task and effectively says there's a statute here, there's a law here that governs how these things are supposed to happen, and you didn't follow it, and now I'm going to make you follow it.
So Smollett's deal was thrown out, and a special prosecutor was named with the legal authority to prosecute Smollett. So you may be thinking, how could you prosecute Jussie again for the same crime? Isn't that covered by double jeopardy? Now, for those of you who don't know, double jeopardy is found in the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, and it essentially prohibits someone from being prosecuted twice by the state for substantially the same crime that occurred at the same time. And Jussie's team's argument is simple, right? Jussie was prosecuted, he forfeited his bond, he did community service in exchange for that dismissal. Jussie's lawyers are arguing that both the state and Jussie had an agreement, and that Jussie fulfilled his part of that agreement. And now the state shouldn't be able to renege on the deal after Jussie has done the community service and paid the $10,000. But there is a problem. See, when Kim Fox recused herself, her office lost all legal authority to make any deals, to prosecute Jussie under the law. So when it comes to double jeopardy, Jussie was technically never really in any jeopardy from Kim Fox. She never legally prosecuted him, and therefore he was never punished technically by the state for his crimes. It was all made up. And since Kim Fox didn't have any legal authority to enter into any deal with Jussie, then any contract argument is void, right? She didn't have the authority to make that deal. She recused herself, and under state law, it's over. So here's how the judge ruled on the double jeopardy issue previously.
In the actor's case. In a 21-page decision, Judge Tooman said the problem boiled down to Kim Fox's decision to appoint this man, Cook County State's Attorney Joseph Magatz, to take her place after she recused herself. Simply put, that was wrong. She had no authority to do that. She appointed Magatz to, quote, a fictitious office having no legal existence. He said a special prosecutor is needed to, quote, restore the public's confidence in the integrity of our criminal justice system.
So Kim Fox did everything possible to help Jussie Smollett out of this situation, creating a fake office with no legal authority to prosecute him, giving him a sweetheart deal. What more could she have done? So at sentencing, when Jussie Smollett was prosecuted by the special prosecutor's office who had the legal authority to prosecute him, so Jussie Smollett was prosecuted again, this time with the special prosecutor who had the legal authority to make any deals and prosecute Smollett under state law. Now, Jussie Smollett's defense team is arguing it's not his fault that the state prosecutor violated the law and that they didn't have any authority to prosecute him. How would he know that? This easily violates double jeopardy. He actually is being punished twice. Here it is.
The next issue I'd like to address is the double jeopardy. And we had briefed this before. The court's very familiar with our position on this, but just in brief to highlight a few of our points. The double jeopardy clause does not just prohibit double prosecutions, it also prohibits double punishment. And to punish somebody twice for the same thing is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. And here, Mr. Smollett was clearly punished in the prior criminal proceedings by the imposition of a criminal penalty. Now, certain people may disagree with the severity of that punishment. They may not think that was a just result, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he was criminally punished. And even the office of the special prosecutor, at the outset of the case, when they filed the new indictment, they issued on February 20th, 2020, something called an information release. And in that information release, Dan Webb himself acknowledged that Mr. Smollett had been punished during the prior criminal proceeding. And I quote him when I say that Mr. Webb stated that the only punishment for Mr. Smollett was to perform 15 hours of community service and requiring Mr. Smollett to forfeit his $10,000 bond as restitution to the city of Chicago. Those are Mr. Webb's words, not mine. And he said the only punishment. So he acknowledged that Mr. Smollett had been punished. But again, he wasn't satisfied with that punishment. And that's exactly what the double jeopardy clause is meant to prevent, second guessing of one prosecutor's discretion by another prosecutor.
So now that brings us to the news of the day. See, the appeals court looked at the record and said, well, hey, he was actually never prosecuted the first time. The initial prosecution was a fake prosecution. Kim Foxx did not have any authority to prosecute Jussie Smollett under the law. And the law said that you needed a special prosecutor to prosecute him, and they did get a special prosecutor, and he was duly convicted through that process. So Jussie Smollett's conviction was upheld, and even more importantly, his jail sentence was upheld. So now he must now go back to Cook County Jail and serve the remainder of his 180-day sentence. So Jussie Smollett is now appealing to the highest court in Illinois, hoping that they would reverse his conviction. But it seems unlikely. Now, what does that mean for Jussie? If the Illinois Supreme Court does not accept his appeal, then he will now have to go back to the Cook County Jail and serve the other 170, I think, 2 or 3 days in jail. That is going to be a mess. But let me know if you learned something from this presentation. Let me know if you think this was even fair. Because on one end, he was prosecuted twice, but the first prosecution was really a hookup from a friend who tried to kind of sneakily give Jussie a pass. And the law caught up with both of them. Now, for Kim Foxx, for those of you who don't know, she has said she's not seeking re-election because of all this madness, right? No, I don't think she'd even win re-election if she tried. But here is her quick speech of her saying that she's not running for re-election.
And so I am announcing today that at the conclusion of my term in November of 2024, I will be stepping down as state's attorney. I will not be on next year's ballot.
So this essentially brings us to the end of the Jussie Smollett saga. The prosecutor who tried to give him a sweetheart deal is out of a job. Jussie Smollett is going back to jail to serve his full prison sentence, and all seems right with the world. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section, because there, are some people who are going to feel a kind of way about the whole he was prosecuted once by Fox and he wasn't really prosecuted and he did it to him again. But I think with this situation, justice was served. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to all that great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate Delore, and I'll see you next time.